Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV. We are lifelong Catholics and will do this all for free and for our love of Jesus Christ and for Holy Mother, the Church. We will defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Today, after a little break, we're back with the book. Let's see if I can get this. Putin's People by Catherine Belleton. She's an investigative reporter. She worked everywhere, even in Russia. And thank you for doing this book. Very eye-opening. And today we're going to be talking about the Russian ties to the GOP Party and mostly to Donald Trump. And we welcome Brother Alexis to the program.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Order Militaris Radio TV. And I came on today with the icon of St. Nicholas, patron of Russia, to talk about this. Is an important topic. So wherever you are on the political spectrum, you should be enough of an honest, upright person to admit facts. If you want to censor out history and facts because you want your side to seem better and win the election or whatever, that's ideology. That's not reality. As Christians, we should admit facts and not give our loyalty to over to ideologies. And this is especially true of political parties which don't even claim to be Christian, and which, as we have long reported here on Militaris Radio TV, are both run by the Skull and Bones Banks and Lodge in the United States, which is a completely satanic and diabolical organization. So in a recent video of ours that was just nixed over at YouTube, but you can still find over at Odyssey, A Second American Revolution, we spelled all out how it's political theater. And what you really need is a Christian party for America, like the Catholic Party for America. And now they're hunting those videos too. And we'll do some programs on that. But so we have to look at the facts, and the facts is to open our eyes. And this is the truth will set you free, as our Lord and Master Jesus Christ said. And this is true even on the level of history. So there has been a lot of media propaganda about Trump's connection to this, Trump's connection to that. Let's just look at the facts. So we were told when the whole Soviet Union came to an end by certain ex-Russian KGB agents that don't believe it. It is just a game to infiltrate the West. And in yesterday's program, based on this wonderful book, we explained how the KGB class came and took over Russia. But in this program, we're going to talk about how they've infiltrated the West in an entirely new way. This is not a Soviet method of doing it. This is a mafia method of doing it. And so it's very important for them to get friends everywhere. And they spread the tentacles around. And then when they need something, they pull that chain because that person took some money and now he owes them something. And so how did Russia start, or how did Putin's men start infiltrating the GOP? When did it begin? How long ago was it?
Yeah, so she starts out for Yakuin, which is, let me get this, Vladimir Yakuin, former senior KGB officer who served a stint undercover at the United Nations in New York, then joined with Kolchachuk at the United Nations in New York. Then joined Kolchachuk in taking over Bank Rossiya. Putin anointed him chief of the state railway monopoly. So, for Yakin and others in Putin's inner circle, this tactic had been long ingrained. When Yakin started out in the KGB, he joined the department fighting against dissidents, against gays, against anyone who thought differently. Now they were using the same tactics to infiltrate the Western politics. The link with the World Congress of Families was one of the vehicles that allowed Putin's people to make a leap into U.S. conservative right. Yakin was also forging close ties to the U.S. Yakin was also forging close ties to Dana Rohrabacher, a Republican member of Congress, who became very well known for his pro-Putin views, while the pro-life movement of Rand Paul, the Republican senator whose libertarian father, Ron Paul, had been an inspiration to the Tea Party. These tactics were once again pulled from the playbook of Soviet times. When the KGB infiltrated U.S. anti-nuclear movement, the protests against the war in Vietnam, but now Putin's allies are appealing to the base populism and prejudice against immigrants and minorities. It was a seductive message to many who felt left behind by the rush of globalism and multiculturalism. They were nostalgic for what seemed like simpler days. A contingent that had been growing in number ever since in the 2008 financial crash increased the divide between rich and poor.
Okay, so here we see a classic Masonic tactic. So the Masons will create a perverse, deviant organization that attacks Christian civilization. And naturally, Christians are going to have react to that and want to oppose it. Then the Masons send in a fake opposition group that infiltrates them and takes them up over and guides their reaction to the threat so that the threat actually does achieve its purpose and the opposition actually never defends against it. So we have the left in the West who were absolutely, they went bonkers when the Soviet Union fell. It was like their worst of nightmares. And they started on a more accelerated program of cultural Marxism to take the West down. And what's happened since '89 and 2022 in the West is just tremendous, absolute degradation of morals and values in almost every institution. So we're just naturally looking for some Christian authority in the world to come to our rescue. And as we have reported on Ordo Militaris Radio TV, the CIA, the U.S. Department of Defense, has already waged a war against the Vatican for some 70 odd years, and they've achieved a total triumph for denigrating the institution, making an international laughing stock on a daily basis through their plant, Jorge Mario Bergoglio. So where else are people going to look? Well, there you go. Russia, Orthodox Russia, conservative, anti-gay, anti-leftist, anti-Rothschild, anti-George Soros, autocratic, not democratic, any kinds of these left-wingers. We're always going to show videos of us beating them up. And we beat them up on video so that you can see it in the West and you think we're your savior. You know how perfect that propaganda is? And we already pointed out these people aren't your savior. They're worse than the Sicilian mafia. So it is, if you're naive, you don't know anything about Putin, and you're attending World Family of Congress, some pro-life group, and in comes this big, powerful Russian. Well, of course, you know, standard American, he's going to like, oh, the guy has money, he's important, he's a foreigner. Let me flock around him like a fly in front of a flame, and maybe he'll drop a couple thousands in my organization's inbox, and we'll all be nice and happy and fight international Marxism, taking money from KGB agents. You see how insane that is? You see how you're not really free of control? See how you're being totally played? Now, if the Masons are successful for one reason, it's because most people are absolutely naive about the levels of deception, deception upon deception. And they just want to make a quick decision and they get fooled, they get entrapped. Just like if you were going to the supermarket and you just wanted to get the first tomato you saw and you bought it from someone who's selling, you know, poisoned tomatoes. Because you don't know that, you didn't go to someone who everyone says is good, you didn't taste it, you didn't smell it, you didn't check it, you didn't do your due diligence because you don't have time, you're just rushing there because you're off to play your next video game.
Yep.
You're off to go to the next soccer game. You're off to watch football, go to the NASCAR races. That's what's more important to you. And see, that's why the industry of distraction is another system of control. And how did they, okay, so this is how they start. How did they develop this? What was the next step?
So they would go to Western businesses in the United States and create the network. And this is very interesting. This comes from chapter 15, The Network and Donald Trump. And she starts out with this quote by a Russian mobster to his lawyer. You in the West, you think you're playing chess with us, but you're never going to win because we're not following any rules. Then another Russian tycoon says, one time a Soviet agent was sent to UK and he ran out of money. He was introduced into a poker playing circle and he decided to play to save his situation. You notice that when you play poker in the UK, your cards are not normally checked or shown. Everyone takes you at your word as a gentleman. He began to win because no one was checking his cards. He was winning big money. It's the same situation here.
Those Brits don't know how to play poker. Okay, so this is the thing. And this is something that, especially in American, we have a hard time to do. This goes on a lot of topics, and I've been in Europe now 3 years, and I've lived in Europe maybe a total of 7 or 8 years. So I'm talking out of experience that in Europe, the level of sophistication in verbal expressions, the way of using irony and sarcasm, the way of insulting, it is so much more refined in the United States. The United States, we have a culture is based on simple colonists, poor people who came there to do the thing. And so, you know, if you're someone's enemy, you say, I'm your enemy, you know. But it's like in Sicily, it's if someone wants to rob you, the first thing he does when he comes in town, he becomes your best friend. And he might study you for months until you tell him where your money's kept, and then it disappears one day from your room. And you would never suspect it was your best friend, but that's what he was doing all along. And that level of deceit we don't have in the United States. It's just would be considered completely despicable. But it exists in Europe, and you cannot take Europeans always at their word. They don't talk directly and simply, and this is one thing I think that's confused so many people about even what's going on in the Vatican. So we are so easily tricked in the United States for this reason, because we lack that cultural, how you say it, degeneracy in human language. And so we're like little children for these people. They're like running riot. They come to America, they see these people are fools who believe everything I say. And so we get played like at a poker game.
So now it begins. When Shalva Tigrinsky first met Donald Trump at his Taj Mahal casino in Atlantic City in November 1990, he's been in the West for more than 3 years. He left Russia before the Soviet Union fell, permitted by the government to join his wife, a Spanish citizen who'd been brought up in the Soviet Union, and then allowed to leave in a wave of repatriation in the early 80s. But the supposed marriage by Tekugrinsky's own admission um, was a fiction. Long before he left the Soviet Union, he'd been befriended by two leading lights of Soviet foreign intelligence. He told people that he'd been hounded by the KGB over his black market business to such a degree that for 5 years he never used a telephone. But in fact, Russian spy master Yevgeny Primakov was like a father to him. While the former head of the Soviet military intelligence in the United States, Mikhail Milstin, was known to him as a professor and he went often to his home. He was a general and he was also my friend, Tigrinsky told me. He loved me very much. I loved to debate with him on history. Tigrinsky, an ethnic Georgian with a thick mane of dark hair, was a distinguished heir. had trained as a doctor in Moscow, but his business was antique smuggling. He sold ancient icons, paintings, and other valuables into the West, while one branch of the KGB pursued him for his black market activity. Top minds in the foreign intelligence encouraged and cultivated him, then helped send him to the West. The dichotomy reflected the broader split in the Soviet security services as, beginning from the time of former KGB chief Yuri Antropov, progressives pushed and prepared for a transition to the market as the only way to survive the rivalry with the West, while the old guard fought any sign of change.
So this is a perfect example of it's like a two-faced strategy. And this is used by intelligence agencies. Just because someone has a criminal record or is wanted by the police or Interpol doesn't mean they're not a government agent. Okay. And just because someone is opposed to your enemies doesn't mean he's your ally. And just because someone is an ally in the same cause doesn't mean they're actually not working to destroy you. Okay. So this is classic state-sponsored intelligence modus operandi. And so did Trump, we know from his history, and we covered this on Order Militaris Radio TV, Trump was like friends with a lot of shady characters in the 70s and in the 80s. Jewish mafia special, shady bank deals, all kinds of things like that. He hung out with foul-mouthed criminal people who went on. He even pardoned, when he left the White House, he even pardoned the father of one of his business deals, who his father was involved in threatening witnesses. So he's not the lickety clean business guy you think of. He's willing to make any deal to get ahead, and he was so far in debt he had to do that. So
yeah. By the time he met Donald Trump in November 1990, Tigrinsky had made it. The joint venture he had set up almost exactly following the KGB memos for the transition to the market economy had expanded into trading computers, then into construction. His contract to build the first business center for foreign companies in Moscow, which was to house the French energy major Elf Aquitaine, made the eyes of his partners in the Soviet Foreign Ministry water with joy. Not only could they keep close watch on their foreign tenants, they would receive huge sums from them too. Tigrinsky was already rich enough to be what the casino industry calls a high roller. And when he entered Trump's Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, he liked what he saw. The Taj Mahal was a vast palace of 39 stories dripping with chandeliers in gold and covered with onion dome. There were hundreds of gaming tables and elegant lounges, restaurants, and bars. I saw him for the first time around 3 a.m., Tigrinsky recalled. Suddenly there was Trump. Around him were 40 people. We were there for 3 or 4 days, and every night he would appear at 3 or 4 a.m. It was an unrepeatable project. It was a huge operation. He spent huge money on this. Trump was an attractive man. He was very polished and full of energy. We were playing in the casino. We already had the money by then. We had big money by then. Trump showed us the Taj Mahal, where the cash room was, where the safe was, where the computers were, and everything. He lived there, and around him there were many beautiful girls.
so yeah, casinos attract all kinds of low lives, and both sides of my family grew up in Atlantic City, and we never, not a single member of our family ever entered a casino. We knew they're just dens of iniquity, but I had some relatives, who went in to take a look or something like that, and you just get fleeced there. You would just lose everything. And Unfortunately, a lot of people think it's joyful to lose money to people for no reason at all, and they get much more benefit in donating it to charity. So it was known that people were being murdered in hotel rooms, kidnapped, that were spies there, that was swindlers. You could get shaken down in an elevator. I mean, all kinds of things were going, but it never got into the national press because, well, the local papers and journalists were all, guests of these hotels, and they would never talk about things like that.
Yeah. The relationship Tigrinsky began to forge with Trump that night would form the roots of a network of Russian intelligence operatives, tycoons, and organized crime associates that has orbited Trump almost ever since. The people tied to Tigrinsky included a Georgian, Tamir Sapar, his business partner Sam Kleisen, and Azari Azra Algorov, who set up some of the first Soviet-American joint ventures, U.S. trading operations before the Soviet fall. They were part of an interconnecting web of figures that became testimony to the enduring power of the black cash networks created in the final years of the communist regime. Some of them later joined Trump in real estate ventures, helping bail him out when he fell into financial difficulty, offering the prospect of lucrative construction deals in Moscow, while Algorov organized the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow for him. They were among those who, according to Yuri Shevets, later helped save Trump from bankruptcy.
Okay, so one of the most effective methods of this kind of international influence is that you don't have to even bribe anyone. You just have to be a partner in businesses with them, or constant friends or associates, and you've created a sea of opportunity that person has decided to sail his reputation in. And then when that sea wants something, well, they're in your waters. They're going along with your winds, so you can direct their boat where you want them to go. And it takes an extremely strong, principled person to say, no, I'm a president now. I'm not going to change national policy because of my business friends, or I'm not going to judge Russia on the basis of what I know through my business friends. I'm going to listen to the experts because I now have new responsibilities. It's not my own affair. But someone whose whole career has been wheeling and dealing in business relations, he's not going to approach it that way. Now, from the point of view of economics and stuff, Trump did many good things, like putting up tariffs with China and things like that, because he understood the U.S. was being swindled. But that doesn't mean that on key issues, Russia didn't perhaps get what they wanted from Trump, and we'll talk about those. And is this illegal? No, it's not illegal. Everything they were doing was legal. Is this immoral? Well, some of the deals might have been immoral, but when you're doing business in a foreign country and you get some big favor deal, you may not know the strings being attached to it, because you haven't done a background check on the people offering it. It just seems like they're being charitable to you. But, so this can happen to anyone. It's no fault of it, but this is why it's so effective. This is how Russia has expanded into almost all the political parties of the West that are on the right, and a lot of news agencies and institutions, or social institutions, or opposition groups.
Yeah. Let's see. So Tigrinsky had been invited to meet Trump that evening by a leading player in the Atlantic City casino industry, a lawyer named Martin Greenberg, who drafted New Jersey's casino laws in the early 80s and had then become president of the biggest casinos, the Golden Nugget. Greenberg had first met Tigrinsky a year earlier, in 1989, just as progressives in the KGB foreign intelligence arm were stepping up plans to transfer the Communist Party's wealth into havens abroad. Together with Alfred uh, Luciani, an assistant attorney general who also worked on New Jersey's casino laws, had then become the Golden Nuggets executive vice president. Greensburg had been drawn to talk business with Tigrinsky by rumors of the fabled Communist Party wealth. The three men met in a fading glory of Soviet resort towns of Yalta on the Crimean Peninsula and discussed potential investments, including possibly building a Soviet casino there. But the Americans were also looking for investments in their casinos, and to Grudinsky, they heard the myth of the party money and decided the casinos would be a good home for it.
So there you go. There's a lot of influence there because while we think casinos make lots of money, there was so much speculation in real estate in Atlantic City that they were paying way more than what buildings cost. And Trump's casinos finally went bankrupt in Atlantic City because there was just too many casinos all packed in one area, and Atlantic City doesn't have good roads and railways that go to it. And its reputation as a resort town is gone way down since the war. It was World War II that Atlantic City was the place to be. And so they got desperate. Like even the casinos in Las Vegas get desperate and take money. And it's notorious how many mafia organizations are partners or backers or actually owners of casinos in Las Vegas for that reason. You would think with swindling people money left and right, but they tend to spend so much in ostentation that, and there's so many mafia organizations around. For example, in Atlantic City, all the service companies of all the casinos are controlled by the Sicilian mafia. That's known. And so they suck off lots of money from the organizations.
Mm-hmm. But by 1992, Trump had achieved a remarkable turnabout. He reduced his personal guarantees to $115 million by selling off a string of yachts and planes, and as some reached a restructuring on the rest of his debt. In July 1991, the Taj Mahal had entered prepackaged bankruptcy, but Trump was bailed out by bondholders who agreed to extend his debt payments, as long as he gave them 50% of the casino. He had been helped in the process by two titans of Wall Street, hedge fund owner Carl Icahn and Wilbur Ross, who heads the bankruptcy division of the investment bank N.M. Rothschilds. Together, they were reported to have helped herd the bondholders into agreeing with the deal. The same Martin Greensburg who'd introduced Tigrinsky to Trump also had a connection. He represented bondholders in the restructuring. Tigrinsky, for his part, admitted he knew Icahn.
Okay, so here is a really beautiful picture. We have the Rothschilds who backed the Bolshevik revolution, collaborating with someone who was trying to get the wealth of the Communist Party that they looted from Russia during the Soviet era, invested in casinos run by their agents in Atlantic City. And if you know anything about the Rothschilds, you could see that why would they be helping Trump? You have to understand that Trump was a good friend of Hillary Clinton and Obama their whole lives, and they're all Rothschild backed. So is Biden Rothschild backed. So if you think Trump came to save America and make America great, here's that little vignette. So that's just factual, evidence. But as I said in our video on the Second American Revolution, don't interpret reality by propaganda and criticize propaganda on the basis of reality. These are historic facts, and they're setting the context of where this man's loyalties lie and what he really wants and who he's really out to defend.
It became a favorite haunt of Vyacheslav Ivankov and feared associates of the Solonitskaya group, but the ice-cold eyes and the violent temper who lauded in New York in March 1992 after Mogilevich, in partnership with the KGB, helped win him early release from the Russian jail, where he served 10 years for forgery and drug trafficking. The FBI believed Yaponichik was leading an international crime organization out of his base in Brighton Beach, dealing in drugs, extortion, and murder, and overseeing the U.S. interests in the Sultan and Kaya. Agents eventually tracked him down to a luxury condo in Trump Tower in Manhattan, then to the Taj Mahal, to which he made 19 visits while under surveillance between March and April 1993, gambling $250,000 there.
So here's another fact that shows that Trump's clients, you might say, were Russian mafia.
Mhm.
KGB sponsored Russian mafia.
Trump had survived his first threat of bankruptcy, and the Russians were among those who had helped him do so. The Taj Mahal became such a popular spot for Russian immigrants that part of a Russian movie was filmed there, a comedy that featured a casino owned by the Russian mob. While Trump climbed out of near bankruptcy, the Grinsky stayed close by. He grew close to Sotheby's owner Alfred Taubman and his son-in-law Louis Dubin, a New York real estate developer who was friends with Trump. He hired one of Trump's top executives, Louis Sunshine, who served as Trump Organization's executive vice president, and he nearly bought Mar-a-Lago, Trump's palatial estate in Palm Beach, Florida. He decided against it, he said, because Taubman warned there were too many low-flying planes. He hobnobbed with Steve Wynn, the Golden Nuggets casino owner, who was in turn a rival and then a close friend of Trump.
So Mar-a-Lago is in the news even way back then. The Russians are prudent, I know, because any low-flying plane could, surveil your electronic communications, intercept, or even do nastier things. And so, not to mention it just would give noise. But if you grew up in the Soviet Union and you're in the KGB, constantly afraid of being arrested or assassinated, you couldn't sleep at night with low-flying planes.
Yeah. He was working in close cooperation with Yuri Lusovkov's Moscow city government, even sharing an office with senior officials of the city's new construction department, together with the Milshin and Yelena Baturina, the wife of Moscow's mayor. He became an owner of the Moscow oil refinery, which supplied most of the city and the surrounding region through a lucrative contract with BP. The refinery was contracted to sell at least $800 million worth of oil product exports through the Tikurinsky's dynamic fellow Georgian associate, Tamar Sapir, in New York.
Okay, so they had a lot of Western companies were involved in this. They weren't targeting only Trump. It would be naive to think that they were out to rake in the cash for themselves. So you wonder where Putin's and all his men got so many billions of dollars. Say Putin has 200 billion stashed away in his own accounts. It's through this kind of graft, this kind of economic activity.
Yeah. So Sapir had immigrated from the Soviet Union to New York in 1975, becoming a pioneer in the first KGB-backed oil trade operations there. He'd worked first as a taxi driver and then providing an exclusive clientele of Soviet officials and KGB officers with the latest in American electronic goods. In those years, he operated from a store called Joy Lude in the center of Manhattan, whose customers included Soviet Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze and Yevgeny Primakov. But the shop became a front for a much bigger operation, which granted Sapir lucrative licenses to trade large amounts of Soviet fertilizer and oil products. Soon he became a billionaire. His partner in the business was Sam Kleisen, a barrel-chested immigrant from the Ukrainian port of Odessa, who also traded metals with Mikhail Cherny, one of the first alleged mobsters to transfer Soviet wealth through KGB-linked firms. Neither of them would have been able to run such an operation out of New York without the explicit support and involvement of the KGB. Klein had met Trump long ago, as the 70s, when he gave Trump a loan for 700 television sets, he later said.
So you go from selling TV sets to become a billionaire. That's amazing economics. But this is when you engage in economic activity, acquire influence. It's a different sort of thing, and corrupt, unscrupulous people realize that by bribes they can make a lot more money than by decent profit. And so,
Yeah.
Trump knew this network long, but he might not realize the KGB. But his constant level of debt, his constant threat of going under, has made him very, very vulnerable. This was something pointed out when he ran for office. No, that doesn't mean he wasn't in many ways a good president, but this is what you have to understand, that when you're offered the two candidates, both might be so compromised that the end result is a globalist win by one system of control or not. When we've had an absolutely lickety-split, never politically involved, average American from like the Midwest become president, not in recent time. They're all coming out of the Northeast, all coming from Skull and Bones institutions or Ivy League schools, or they're people completely controlled by the mafia. And the fact that in the United States we habitually accept that both the parties are going to give us that kind of a candidate shows you just how unreal we are when we say we want a solution to the problems of America. We're not even voting for a solution to our problems of America.
Now we're going to talk about the Mueller investigation, what they're thinking of it in Russia. Dmitry Peskov, Putin's powerful press secretary who had previously served abroad as a diplomat, had once boasted that the efforts of the Robert Mueller, the special counsel appointed to investigate Trump's ties to Russia, would never get anywhere. In Russia, it's called passing water through a sieve, he said. That's exactly what the process looks like. He turned out to pretty much right. Former KGB officer Yuri Shevets had nothing but scorn for the published results of Mueller's investigation. It was no more than a collection of interviews, he said. What was published contained zero counterintelligence. How can you investigate Trump without this? The Mueller investigation, the public pronouncements of Trump and the Republican Party appeared to have fizzled out, but it became clear that parts of the same network of Moscow's moneymen were continuing to operate. As the 2020 U.S. presidential election approached, some of them appeared still to be attempting to steer things Trump's way. Sapir's business partner and Tekrinsky's associate, Sam Kleisman, had forged close relations with Rudy Giuliani, the former New York mayor who by that time was acting as Trump's personal attorney. Kleisman liked to boast of his friendly relations with Trump, and he funneled substantial donations to Giuliani's mayoral campaign in the 90s. By 2019, he was urging Giuliani to investigate allegations of corruption in Ukraine. He was calling for Trump's administration to investigate the former Ukrainian president, Pyotr Poroshenko, who led the country through a bitter war with the Kremlin-backed separatists and Russian annexation of Crimea. He was doing so at the crucial time when Giuliani was actively seeking dirt in Ukraine against Trump's potential Democratic rival in the 2020 presidential race, Joe Biden, and Clinton appeared to be opening doors for him there. Then there were two Soviet-born businessmen, Igor Fruman and Lev Parnas, eventually arrested on charges of conspiring to circumvent laws against foreign influence, who had also befriended Giuliani, and one of them claimed Trump. They acted as middlemen, introducing Giuliani to three current and former Ukrainian prosecutors with information about corruption allegations surrounding the Ukrainian gas company Burisma, on the board of which Joe Biden's son Hunter has sat. At the same time, they also began trawling for anything that might infiltrate a pet theory floated by Trump that Ukraine had worked with the Democrats in 2016 to stir up the Kremlin-Trump campaign collusion claims.
Okay, so here's a classic example of political maneuvering. So the Russians may have not felt that they're in favor of either the Democrats or the Republicans, but because Trump had these long-standing ties and friends and has sailed his boat in the Russian waters, they figured it's best to help him win the election than, or we win his election, than to do nothing, because they could get or expect a more favorable approach. And actually, during the Trump administration, they got some favors. There was a $400 billion bill to help Ukraine defend itself, which the Trump administration nixed. And we wouldn't be in this present war if that was the case. And people complain about Biden giving 100 billion or 150 billion to the Ukraine. That's nowhere near what was proposed by Congress under Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And no one complained about that. So this gets back to the whole thing. When we're making a political decision, are we going to make it on ideologic basis and don't give a bleep about people suffering? Or are we going to put people first, regardless of ideology? And Trump made the ideologic decision because he felt the Ukrainian government was a friend of Hillary Clinton, and maybe because he felt there would be kickback from the Ukraine to the Democratic Party. And he didn't want them to get, 10 million or 20 million kickback out of 400 billion. But a lot of innocent people have died because of that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing today, too. People think that if you're defending Christian families in Ukraine, you're supporting the government, or you're supporting the past personal history and values of the president of the government. So it's just silly arguments of people who are so base in their morals and so naive in their mind that they think that that kind of reasoning is valid or honest or Christian. It's just not. I mean, it's good for the tweet to get 100 likes. Not another penny for the Ukraine, but you just said not another penny to defend Christian families from being genocided by a criminal mafia state. That's what you just said.
Oh.
If you said it in the right way, you wouldn't get likes because people would see that you're a fraud. You're not a conservative. You're not a Christian. You're like, give it all to me. But are you even defending the borders of your own country? No, you're not even doing that. So you're spending all day tweeting and you just want to get likes and you say, oh, I'm American. I'm patriotic.
Mm.
As Christians, we should be serving Jesus Christ and not getting people to praise us on the street corners as we were thick phylacteries of patriotism and social media profile. It's not what we're supposed to be about. And, it's very sad. And so the evidence accumulated shows how easy it was for Trump to be influenced to take a course that would help Russia prepare for the war. And yeah, I don't think they would have started this under Trump, but they were smart. They may even help Trump. We didn't lose the re-election, but they did it under Biden because they knew they could get away with it. But Trump had prepared the way.
Yeah.
And this entire network that they had been playing in America for 20, 30 years served them. It was a long, deep plan. They couldn't be caught in anything because, generally speaking, they were not involved in graft and directly doing anything illegal. And that's how effective it is. That's how pervasive it is. But as Christians, don't let your friends decide whether you should do something or not. Do it whether it's right, and don't do it because it's wrong. And you'll be impervious to this kind of influence.
And recent report is there are now like 50 pro-Putin Republicans who have signed on with Putin ally and friend Rand Paul to block the next budget of military hardware.
So the Republican Party is serving Russia well. Are they serving America well?
No.
They're certainly not serving Christians. And we get back to this we've talked about this many times on the Catholic Party of America programs. If we took our Christian responsibility serious when we voted in the United States, U.S. foreign policy would serve Jesus Christ in the world. Wouldn't serve the Masonic Order, wouldn't serve the military industrial establishment, wouldn't serve Russia, wouldn't serve the personal finances of a real estate magnate. Who do we have to blame for that it doesn't? And what will Christ ask of us on the day of judgment and how we voted? And all these, don't listen to all these silly Christians and silly Catholics who say, if you don't vote for Trump, it's a mortal sin. And then say, well, why don't we organize a Christian party? Oh, that would never work.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they don't believe in Jesus Christ. They don't believe that Christ would actually help Christians renew America. And that's sad. That's tragic. But this war in the Ukraine is showing really, it's taking the mask off of all the conservative movement in the United States. It's very pro-Russia, not very pro-Jesus Christ, and it's not even very pro-American.
So this has been our show on the Trump and the KGB and the GOP Party. Please like and share this program, and thank you for watching. And any last words?
Unlike many YouTube channels or social media apostolates, Ordo Militaris Radio TV does not raise money for the salaries of anyone who appears on it. It all goes to the costs of the software, the costs of the server, and for equipment. So if you like the program at Ordo Militaris Radio TV, consider making a contribution to Ordo Militaris Radio TV so that this apostolate can expand. AJ does a lot of programming, and we get the truth out there regardless of what it is, and it's all well documented, and AJ gives you all the links. So it's really a unique thing if you go on social media for the truth. If you want information to help you being a good Christian, and especially since we do so much of our programming about the United States, to be a good Catholic in the United States. By your contributions, you show your gratefulness, but also share the programs. This is not a channel that gets many viewers, but it would get more if everyone who watched it shared the programs with their friends. And AJ already does everything. He can't start sharing, and he already shares his programs on like a dozen social media platforms. But you got to share them with your friends too, if you want this information. If you believe truth is what's going to liberate people, and so I encourage you to all those things. God bless. Deus Vult.
Deus Vult.